welcome back to our channel. Today, we delve into one of the most sobering and tragic narratives in the book of Genesis, the story of Dinah in chapter 34. It has a powerful account filled with violence, deception, and the devastating consequences of unchecked anger. Our story begins with Dinah, the daughter of Jacob and Leah. Young and perhaps curious, she goes out to visit the women of the land of Canaan. It's here that her life takes a dark and irreversible turn. Shechem, the son of Hamor the Hivite, the ruler of that area, sees her. The scripture tells us he took her, violated her, and shamed her. It was an act of brutal violence. After this horrific act, a strange thing happens. Shechem becomes infatuated with Dinah. He speaks tenderly to her and genuinely seems to have fallen in love with her. He goes to his father, Hamor, and says, "Get me this young woman as my wife." Hamor goes to Jacob to negotiate a marriage. He presents a generous offer. Our people will intermarry. We will share the land, trade freely, and become one people. Shechem himself adds to the offer, telling Jacob and his sons he will pay any bride price they ask, no matter how high, if they will just give Dinah to him as his wife. He pleads, trying to make amends for the terrible wrong he committed. But while these negotiations are happening, Dinah's brothers return from the fields. When they hear what happened, they are consumed with rage. The text says they were furiously angry because Shechem had done the disgraceful thing in Israel, something that should never be done. In their eyes, the honor of their sister and their entire family had been defiled. This was an outrage that could not be tolerated. Their fury, however, was a cold, calculating fire. They decided to answer Shechem and his father deceitfully. They put on a mask of diplomacy, hiding the vengeance brewing in their hearts. They said to the Hivites, "We can't give our sister to a man who is not circumcised. That would be a disgrace to us. But we will agree on one condition. If you become like us by circumcising all your males, then we will give you our daughters and take your daughters for ourselves. We will settle among you and become one people." Their words sounded like a path to peace, a genuine proposal for unity. But it was a trap, a wicked and clever scheme designed for maximum destruction. Hamor and Shechem were delighted with the proposal. They saw it as the perfect solution. They went to the gate of their city and persuaded all the men of Shechem to agree. They argued that Jacob's family was peaceful, that their land could support them, and that this alliance would bring great prosperity. The men of the city, swayed by their leaders and the promise of wealth, all agreed to be circumcised. So every male in the city of Shechem underwent the painful ritual. For 2 days, the city was filled with men recovering from the procedure. They were vulnerable, weak, and in pain, completely unsuspecting of the horror that was about to be unleashed upon them. Then, on the third day, when the men were in the most pain, the plot was sprung. Simeon and Levi, Dinah's full brothers from her mother Leah, took their swords and entered the unsuspecting city. Fueled by their fierce anger, they moved through the streets, killing every single man. They cut down Hamor and his son Shechem, taking Dinah from his house and leaving. Their swords, once symbols of protection, became instruments of a gruesome massacre. The act was one of total, indiscriminate retribution. They didn't just target the perpetrator. They annihilated an entire city of men who, while complicit in their silence, were not all directly guilty of the initial crime. But the violence didn't end with Simeon and Levi. The other sons of Jacob arrived at the scene of the slaughter. Seeing the city defenseless, they joined in, but for a different reason, plunder. They looted everything. They seized the flocks, the herds, and the donkeys. They took all the wealth, and most disturbingly, they captured all the women and children, making them captives. The initial act of violence against one woman had spiraled into a catastrophe that destroyed countless families. When Jacob heard what his sons had done, he was not proud. He was terrified. He rebuked Simeon and Levi, not for the immorality of their actions, but for the practical danger they had created. He said, "You have brought trouble on me by making me a stench to the Canaanites and Perizzites, the people living in this land. We are few in number, and if they join forces against me and attack me, I and my household will be destroyed." Jacob's primary concern was survival. He feared retaliation from the surrounding nations, who would surely be horrified and angered by such a brutal massacre. He saw his son's rage as a reckless act that had jeopardized their entire family's existence, but his sons were unrepentant. Their response to their father was sharp and defensive. Should he have treated our sister like a prostitute? In their minds, their extreme violence was a justified response to the extreme dishonor their sister had suffered. They saw their actions not as murder, but as justice. This event left a deep and lasting scar. The anger of Simeon and Levi was not forgotten. Many years later, on his deathbed, Jacob gathered his 12 sons to give them his final blessings and prophecies. When he came to Simeon and Levi, his words were not a blessing, but a curse. He recalled the massacre at Shechem, saying, "Simeon and Levi are brothers. Their swords are weapons of violence. Let me not enter their council. Let me not join their assembly, for they have killed men in their anger and hamstrung oxen as they pleased. Cursed be their anger, so fierce, and their fury, so cruel. I will scatter them in Jacob and disperse them in Israel." Jacob's prophecy came true. The tribes of Simeon and Levi never received a consolidated territory of their own like their brothers. The tribe of Simeon was eventually absorbed into the larger territory of Judah, and the Levites were scattered throughout all the tribes of Israel, serving as priests and assistants in the tabernacle and temple, without a land inheritance of their own. The story of Dinah is a heartbreaking lesson. It shows how one act of violence can create a ripple effect, leading to deception, mass murder, and generations of consequences. It's a stark reminder of the destructive power of uncontrolled rage and the way vengeance can corrupt even those who believe they are acting in the name of justice. It challenges us to consider the fine line between righteous anger and cruel fury, and the legacy we leave behind through our actions. Thank you for joining us for this deep dive into Genesis 34. If you found this study meaningful, please like, subscribe, and share it with others. We look forward to exploring more of these profound biblical stories with you next time.